Hey guys, what's up? It's Louder. Welcome back to another episode. So today we're going to be going over how to learn to code. And there's a huge misconception that says it's hard to code or coding is hard. Well, I'm here to break down how you can start knowing very little to nothing and get to at least a beginner level. There will be another video coming out that'll show you how to get from beginner to intermediate or even advanced. But today we're going to touch on how to start programming or how to start coding. Let's jump into it. So a lot of you know that once you start coding goes, hand in hand, you practice, you get better. But where do you start when you don't know? Well, I'm going to give you some free resources, go over some tips and tricks and how to start. So the first one is that you're going to want to learn fundamentals. What do I mean by fundamentals? Well, you're going to want to go to something like an interactive website, something like Codecademy or Free Code Camp. And no, I'm not sponsored by them, but they're websites that I've been to, I've seen them, and they're pretty good to get started. The reason they're so good to get started is actually pretty simple. You can log in and code, 1, from anywhere, 2, without needing to install anything on your machine. So what do I mean by that? Let's take Python, for instance. You install Python on your computer. Now you're going to either need to go get a free community edition of PyCharm. You're going to go need to get Spider. You're going to go need to get some Python IDE or Visual Studio Code. Then you're going to have to set it up, make sure that your IDE is pointing to the Python installation, and then you can start coding. Versus with these websites, a lot of it is hit the ground running. You can put in code, they execute it for you, and they let you know what it is. So that's a very great way for a beginner to just go ahead and get their hands on code. Once you're on that, once you've already started to code with that, now you want to make sure you're learning the foundations. You're going to want to go over things like variables, functions, for loops, while loops, if else. You're going to want to go over some of the basic fundamentals, and I'm going to list them right now. And essentially the reason you want to get very comfortable with these is these will be the building blocks for the rest of your programming career. And I know it sounds scary, but the reality is that the more you practice, the better you'll get. So now that you've gone to these free interactive websites, well, what's next? Well, the next thing would be to actually start practicing. You want to pick up a project. You want to pick up something where you can code and you can build and you can iterate. The best thing to do is design, build, deploy, and iterate. You'll see a similar model on my channel because that's what I believe. You always want to be going a continuous development, continuous integration, which is actually one philosophy of programming. So how do you do that? Well, you pick a project. You want to either get something like a video game, application, website, something you've always dreamed or wanted to do, and start. Now, of course, you're not going to go build the new Facebook. You're not going to go build the new Twitter. You're not going to go build the latest AAA title. You want to start small. So what I mean by small? Take games, for example. You want to do something like Snake, Pong, something simple. Even Space Invaders if you're feeling ambitious. Websites. You want to build a basic portfolio website, maybe a grocery website, a to-do list website, something that you can code and interact with and go back and forth with. And apps, same thing. For apps, you also want to be careful what language you pick, because if you're learning Python, it's going to be very difficult to get a app out, but it won't be that difficult for a web application. So you want to also keep in mind what you want to do. On that topic, let me give you just a brief rundown. If you want to do websites, Python or JavaScript would be really good to go. Python, you have things like Django or Flask where you can start. If you're doing JavaScript, well, you have like Node. You can do a mean stack, which is Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node, or a MERN stack, which is Mongo, Express, React, and Node. And JavaScript, you can even do some applications, which is the React Native, which essentially takes JavaScript and now tries to make it a native application. I'll do a tutorial on that at some point in the future on this channel because I like it. I think it's cool. Now that you have a project built out, now that you have your basic fundamental project, what do you do? To get really good, what I recommend is go do coding challenges, go do coding games. So you want to go to something like Coding Games, HackerRank, Code Wars, something like that, and you're going to want to just code. You're going to want to try to level up your skill. Once you've gone through the motions and you've practiced a bit there, then you can feel pretty confident that, hey, you got some of the fundamentals down. What happens after that? Well, something that I heavily recommend is look for your local meetup. Go to meetup.com. Go to see if you have anything like a local co-working space. For example, in San Antonio, Texas, we have something called Geekdom. Go find a community, go find a group, go find people who are developing. Sometimes you may even want to go to your local college, see where the computer science majors hang out with. Or maybe you are a computer science major and you just got to go find a group. All that depends on your situation, but the most important thing is go find a group, go find people who are coding and see what they're doing. You want to surround yourself with people that are not only coding, but that are a level ahead of you. So that way they can kind of give you a little guidance if you get lost. Now, most of the people won't be your mentor. Most of these people won't be your full-time teacher. So don't go with that expectation, but it's a great way to make friends, especially if there's other people who are learning. So I'm going to obviously get the question, hey, what if I don't know, or I'm in a small town or something like that? Well, we have the internet. That's where you're watching this video. Go find a group on whether it's your language, your framework, game developers, app developers, web developers. There's communities for almost everything in tech. Go find something that pertains to you, jump in, try to provide value, and try to be back and forth so you can grow as a developer. So now you've joined a group, now you've done some basic coding. The next thing, and what I recommend, is put those skills to test. Go to a hackathon, go to a code jam, and try to release a product, even if something small, even if it's something simple. So what do I mean? There is a lot of code jams. For example, there's 48-hour hackathons for games. If you want to make a game, this may be the perfect time. You can go to a physical hackathon, meet up with other people, see how other people are developers, maybe meet an artist, maybe meet another intro game level developer, maybe meet someone else who's just starting, just like you, and they'll be able to say, hey, here's what I learned. If you want to make apps, same thing, go to hackathon, see where you can find other people who are interested in building apps or websites. By doing these things, you get to meet other people. The most important part of all this, if you've seen the kind of recurring theme, is code, code, and code. The only way to get better is to code. You're gonna write 10,000 lines of horrible code, no matter who you are, maybe more, maybe less, but you're gonna write a lot of bad lines, and it comes with time. You're gonna get better. Just like a river is created by a water flow over time, eroding away at it, you are building up your skill set by piling code slowly but surely. So now that you've done all that, what could be the next step? What could you do next after all that? This is not a tip that I see a lot of people give. It's not something I see a lot of people recommend, but it's something that I think is pretty cool. Go to GitHub, go to GitLab, go to one of those and pull down a couple projects. Just do a search for something you've always were interested in doing. See if somebody else has done it. Kind of like web scrapers, or let's say a game or anything like that. Just go find a repo, download it, play with it. Look, see how they designed it. Is that something you would have done? And if you want to take it a step further, download it and try to make a commit or pull request to it. A lot of times there will be a lot of bugs that simple entry-level developers will be able to actually contribute to. What's this mean? Well, maybe there's spelling errors. Maybe there is simple bugs that could be contributed by someone who's very early on in the process. And what that does is that gives you the ability to get active. That gives you the ability to go out there and be like, hey, I'm a programmer too, and I want to contribute to you guys. Let's go ahead and recap. You went onto the interactive websites, you coded. Now that you coded, you got a project. Now that you got a project, you went to hackathons, gameathons, whatever you want to call it, and you participated, you made friends. Great. Now you're a developer who has friends who are developers. That's one way to step up. After that, you've either contributed to open source or you started examining code, and now you're building it for fun. The next thing that you can do, but I will cover it in more detail in another video, is algorithms and data structures. And I'll leave it at that. That'll be another topic for another day, probably next week. But you want to make sure that as you're coding, make sure to get down and try to see how other people are. The last thing you want to do is get bad habits. So if you can actually go out and go see open source or go see other projects and try to see what they're doing. The most important thing, design, build, deploy, iterate. You want to continuously be coding. You want to continuously be practicing your skill set. If this is something you want to do for fun, then it's not as intensive. If this is something you want to do for a career change, for a skill set, say you're graduating high school and you want to go into the field, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s, it doesn't matter, and you want a career change. If this is something you want to take seriously, then you got to put in the time and the effort. The skill set will not be acquired overnight. You can do it. It's hard, but it's totally doable. The best things in life are never easy. So, thank you guys. If you have any comments, questions, please subscribe. Please leave a comment. Please leave a like. And remember, keep coding. This is Laudo. Till next time, I'm logging off.